If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. For one, it's free, and there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So make sure you download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome to Growth with Portia, a weekly conversation for your personal and professional growth. Here is your host, Portia Booker.
Hey listeners, welcome to Growth with Portia. I'm your host, Portia Booker, and yes, this is my real name. So, question for you. Did you bring your curious mind today? If so, I don't want to keep you waiting. Let's dive in. This conversation is number 5 in the series of honoring my beloved mother, Sharonne Lopez, who made her transition from Earth on July 7, 2022. So today I am joined by a personal development coach who is on a mission to empower others to have a voice and fulfill their life's purpose. After surviving years of abuse, trauma, and addiction, she would turn the mess of her life into a message of hope for others. Now, being in the recovery space for the past 11 years, she has been gifted the tools of experience to guide more wounded individuals on their healing journey. She is also the host of the podcast, Getting to the Root of It, where discussions on mental health and addiction come to a common ground. So without further delay, welcome to Growth with Portia, Miss Natashah Khan. How you doing today, Natashah?
I am well. Thank you for that beautiful, beautiful introduction. I appreciate that.
Hey, every day is great that ends in Y. And I love sharing these spaces with people who can bring more insight into how we can heal ourselves, right? Because we're in this society where there's so much information, misinformation, let's say, and not enough clear-cut concrete. So, Natashah, I always love to start my conversations with gratitude. What are you grateful for today?
It's always my number one. I'm grateful to have a relationship with God, first and foremost. You know, I'm grateful for the people that God puts into my life. I'm grateful for my health. I'm just grateful for, you said something earlier about, you know, the mess of my life has turned into such an amazing positive message for others. So I'm actually truly grateful for the mess of my life, to be, believe it or not.
And Natashah, I got to ask this. What did it take for you to reach that space to say, you know, this earthquake in my life was the best thing that could have happened to me? What did it take for you to reach that space of acceptance?
That's a loaded question, only because it took a lot of time. It took a lot of me realizing through failed attempts of trying to do everything the way I wanted it done, to realize that God had a greater plan for me. And it's been a journey. I mean, I'm now 13 years sober from a lot of different things in my life: drugs, alcohol, being a workaholic, trying to be that person that's in control, using my anger as a means to intimidate others to get what I want. So it's just been a journey of trial and error, really, and realizing that I've been getting in my own way. And a lot of, while some of the things that I've endured, like you mentioned about abuse and trauma, those were not things that I asked for. Those were things that were inflicted upon me. As I got older, I continued to allow the past to affect that present time in my life. So a lot of my abuse and trauma happened, you know, prior to the age of, let's say, 18. From 18 onward, I kept living in that vicious cycle of turmoil. And I just had this belief. I mean, I grew up knowing of God, but I just continued to believe that I can make my own way, right? Yes, God's there. God's great. God's wonderful. I was that individual that just, I knew of him, but I really didn't truly understand and or believe who God was and what God could truly do for my life. And I know that's, you know, that may sound very ignorant, but that's just where I was in my mindset growing up. So I always got in my way all the time. You know, I always got in the way of wanting to be the one in the driver's seat and taking control of my life. And God knows there were times I even stepped out and drove in other people's car and got in front of their steering wheel and took control of their lives, right? And before you know it, I wanted to control everyone and everything around me. And that wasn't conscious, like that wasn't intentional for me to do that. It was just something that internally, because of I wanted to be perfect, because I wanted to be better, because I wanted to be seen, because I wanted to be liked, and I wanted things to go well. Those limiting beliefs is what led me to want to control myself and control other people. But it never worked out. It may have started off strong, but it didn't end up strong. And so as a result of that, it's what has brought me to the space. And really only probably in the last 3 years, and even more so in the last year, of just getting out of the way and saying, okay, God's in control. He's always been. And it's not me. And I really need to sit down and shut up and listen to what he has to say and let him direct my path.
Natashah, I love what you brought up about that vision to be perfect and taking the reign on every single aspect of your life, right? There's this term that I've heard called extreme independence, where it's a trauma response. And so, what would you say, Natashah, for you? How did that extreme independence leverage you to where you are today, but also might have hindered you from reaching this point earlier?
I mean, great question. I mean, in my earlier years, that extreme independence, again, falling back on my own beliefs, it brought me a lot of success. It really took me to the top of the ladder. I was able to achieve things. But when the trials in life, life happens, right? And I always say bad things happen to good people. And so when things would happen, I would get stuck and I would just not know where to go from there, because I feel like I've done it all. I've given my all. I've given my everything. I've done everything that I know to do, and I would just not know where to go. And in those moments, felt very lost, very confused. And again, back then, although I knew of this God, I didn't turn to God. I didn't seek God for direction and or guidance. I was one that would pray and ask God for things. But while I'm asking God for things, or wanting things in my life to turn around, I wasn't taking time to listen to how he was answering me or how he was responding to me. Or there were times where he was responding and giving me answers, but guess what? It wasn't what Natashah wanted to hear, right? Or it wasn't meeting the expectation in my mind of the way that it's what I expected the outcome to be, or how I expected things to turn around for me. It didn't look like that. So again, trial and error through the years, I've just come to learn that I'm a big believer that everything in our lives happened for purpose, right? So everything that I've been through has allowed me to be where I am today. And in order to get to this space, my stubbornness hindered me, and my humility is what saved me. Being humble before the Lord, being humble in every aspect of my life has just allowed me to take a back seat and realize, like, you don't have to be in control of everything. You've tried it. And while it may have deemed successful at one point in your life, it was like this double-edged sword. It started off being something that was helpful to me, but then it turned around and became something harmful to me in the end.
Natashah, one of the things I caught on into that was kind of like how you're asking God for help, right? And because the help does not replicate our vision of help, it's like the parable of the guy at sea, right? He's like, hey, send somebody to save me. But yet I've sent you a life jacket. I've sent you several other people. But because they're not in your mind the help that you want, you drown.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Natashah, for you, what would you say for our listeners who are in that boat of like you, where they understand, they know God, they have a little bit of faith, maybe the size of a mustard seed, but maybe they're not able to fully surrender to being open to the way that He's answering them? What tips can you leave with our listeners today around that?
Wow. Seeing the things that's, when you're getting help, seeing it for what it is, learning to embrace what's coming to you, what's being given to you. One of the things I learned in my early sobriety is to lower and remove expectations, right? If I can lower the expectation in my mind that I'm going to use the guy in the boat, for instance, right? That analogy or that story of this man is stranded and he's asking for help. There's this expectation that I want God to bodily come down and help me, right? Versus me realizing and keeping my eyes wide open to see how another person in a boat passing by and or a life preserver and things of that nature are forms of help. I've been taught through the years of learning to be very specific in my prayer, right? Being very specific with what I ask for. I ask for help. Well, God's going to send you help. But again, if your help is based on what you're expecting, you're going to be sadly disappointed, right? And unrealistic expectations breeds resentment. And I think in the beginning for me, I was very angry with God in the early stages of my journey in recovery because God wasn't meeting my expectations. And so through the years, I've learned that if I just open my eyes to embracing the people that he's put in my life, embracing the help, whatever little, it's not little, but in my eyes, I see it as little help, right? So whatever is being given to me, if I can just welcome that and embrace that and just say thank you without the expectation, that really goes a long ways. And help is help, right? So why do I have to box in my help? Why does my help just have to come from God? And in the years of my journey, I've realized that God uses people to help each other, right? So I've learned along the ways of how he is helping me. He's just using people as a vessel to be able to help me in my life and in my journey. So hopefully that helps, but it's a process. And, one of the things too, is this woman that I've become and where I am in my life today took time. I had to learn to be patient, and I think that's another tip when you're seeking help, is to be patient. You've got to wait for the help to come. It doesn't always happen when you want it, when you want it and how you want it. And I think we live in a society today where everything is, I want it now, right? I either want it now or I want more. And this whole concept is hurting us because yes, you may want it now, but that's not how the world works. That's not how life works. Our life isn't like, the Burger King commercial and you get it your way right away kind of thing, right? I would say that you've got to learn to understand that things will come and it will come in time. So a lot of what I've shared with you thus far really came with just, again, trial and error and learning to be patient, that I will get the help, but it's not always when Natashah wants it, how Natashah wants it, and it doesn't have to be, right now.
100%, Natashah. And like they say, the best teacher is life itself, because everything is not going to be parallel the way that we envision it. We have to have patience, whatever that may be, and we just have to see how it's going to transpire and also be open to that. And so we're going to take our first quick break right here on Groove Portia. Everybody stick with us. We will be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back right here on Groove Portia. I'm joined remotely with Natashah Khan, and we were just having a great conversation, of course, about having patience and being open to when God responds to you. Natashah, let's talk about addiction and mental health. Now, before you became sober, what belief did you have about yourself that held you captive in your addiction, do you think?
I have more than one. As a result of my past and the things that I had been through, there was beliefs of I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy. Everything that goes wrong is my fault. And if I'm not good enough, then I need to be perfect. I mean, there's an endless list. I hate to say that. I mean, hate to, but love to, in the sense that I hated it because that's the stuff that kept me down. I never thought that I would achieve anything. I would never think I'd be good enough for anything. And so I always, as a result of having those limited beliefs, I would get scared. I would be fearful. I would have anxiety, thinking that I would never be good as the guy or gal next to me. Over time, became very defeating, and it limited my ability to perform at my very best. That tapped into being depressed, you know? So I had some mental health issues that evolved with time as a result of those limiting beliefs, because with those limiting beliefs came these feelings of, I felt helpless, I felt rejected, I felt hurt, scared, powerless. Powerless was a big one for me. You know, again, here's this person trying to control, right? And then you get to this place where I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go from here. And that feeling of powerlessness, I drowned in that emotion more than any other emotion, of just not being able to get ahead or to do what I needed to do for myself. And so that kept me down. And with that mentality, the attitudes that came from that was sort of I don't care. I am going to be who I am. I'm not going to be anything worthy. I'm not going to be anything good enough. So why should I care? Nobody cares about me. Why should I care about me? Is sort of the mindset that I took on. And when I was introduced, by the time I was 18, introduced to sex, drugs, and rock and roll, it was party time, you know, and I didn't care. I didn't care if I got hurt anymore. I didn't care if I hurt other people. I just lived life carefree, but also very careless.
And that's the duality, right? That sometimes we go through in certain periods of our life. And I can tell you, Natashah, from even my personal journey, when I left the TV industry, I fell into that boat of, well, who cares? Why should Portia care now when everybody else is exceeding in the area that I worked my butt off to get to? And I'm still part of the stagnant maggot crew. What the heck? I worked super hard. I made the connections. I did everything, but the pit fell under. And so, Natashah, for our listeners who are tuning in, you mentioned about not feeling good enough. And do you find that the feeling of not feeling good enough or being good enough per se falls more on people who have been either victims of abandonment or trauma, and that can lead them into addictive patterns? Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. I mean, I'm a big believer that hurt people, right? So if I'm hurt by someone, it's because really at their core, they're hurt as well. And so there's this great group that I do on cognitive distortions that leads to the limiting beliefs. And it starts with our primal needs. When we come into this world, we are all needing to feel love, feeling of, need affection. We need food, we need shelter, we need to be nurtured. We need guidance, protection, and safety. Those are just some of the primal needs that every human being needs in order for us to develop and in order for us to thrive. And then we come into this world young and innocent, and we're exposed to so many different things, right? And good, bad, and indifferent. And we are just stimulated and influenced by a lot of different experiences in our lives from the time we come out of the womb. Or even when we're in the womb, because I don't know if you've heard, and many people have heard, that one of the reasons why a mother has to take such good care of herself and that baby is because of everything that's around that mother sounds, right? Her stress levels have an impact on that child that's growing within her. So even while in the developmental stages within the womb, we are being influenced, right? You come out into the world, we have these experiences, and yes, most that are prone to have been experienced to trauma, grief and loss, any type of abuse, whether that be physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, and or verbal abuse, are more prone to having this walking away with these cognitive distortions. Now, these cognitive distortions, which is this distorted perspective of self and the world, stems from depending upon the age you are when you have this life experience, due to a lack of communication and or a breakdown in communication, and the individual, the young child, not understanding what exactly it is that they're experiencing, the child, what I refer to as drawing a conclusion, they draw a conclusion, i.e. this belief about what they're seeing and how it's affecting them. So, anything that I have to say, I definitely don't want to come across as if I'm faulting anyone or blaming anyone, right? But as a result of being verbally abused and physically abused as a child, and not having a true understanding other than you were bad, that's why you were disciplined, right? And by no means am I opposed to discipline, but there's a fine line between disciplining a human being and then beating a human being till they start to bleed, right? To me, I don't know about you, but there's a huge difference in that for me. And I don't believe that we need to harm another person physically, emotionally, or verbally in order to discipline them. I have two beautiful daughters today that I've disciplined. And I think once when they were younger, and my oldest daughter holds me to this still this day as a joke, one time I've used my hand on her bottom when she was a little girl. Other than that, I've disciplined my children through just communication. And that is something that was lacking in my life. So as a result of not having that effective communication and not understanding why these things were happening in my life, I walked away with this belief that something had to have been wrong with me, right? What's wrong with me? Why am I not good enough? Why is this person continuing to hurt me to this degree? Why did this happen, right? We have all these whys. And when those whys aren't clear, when we don't understand them, that's what draws that I am statement about myself. Now, as I begin to believe that I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy and I don't fit in and I'm this and I'm that and what else, that draws an emotion in me because I'm a human. For a lot of people who don't like emotions and they don't want to talk about emotions, emotions are a huge part of who you are as a human being. There's the logical side of us and there's the emotional side of us. So now I have all these emotions that I'm experiencing as a result of what I believe to be true. So now, in addition to I not only not understand my life experiences, but now I'm feeling some type of way and I don't have healthy coping skills on how to deal with the way I'm feeling. Do I shove them in a box? Do I throw them out the window? Do I hold on to them? What do I do with these feelings? And as a result of how I feel and not knowing on how to manage my feelings, that then leads to unhealthy behaviors, right? That's when you'll start to see me rebelling and having tantrums and, being disobedient or maybe withdrawing and being guarded and hiding out from the world or from people. These behaviors that we as a society tend to focus on really isn't the issue. The issue is I am behaving outwardly in this manner and or inwardly as a result of how I'm feeling and these limiting beliefs. So I spend a lot of time as a coach and with what I do in helping people understand where the limiting belief came from and what do we need to do in order to change that limiting belief so it gives you the space and freedom to really see who you really are as a person and really see the person that God created you to be. A lot of us believe that who we are today is a result of just where we came from and how we were influenced. But we are so much more than that. And like you had said at the beginning of this, yes, I may have had a huge mess in my life, but those messes needed to happen. I needed to experience it so that I can grow and evolve into the woman that God's created me to be. I lost my way and I can own and identify that I lost my way. And I walked away from understanding God, not just knowing him, understanding him, having a relationship to where I could, be the woman he's called me to be. But although I might have missed the boat, right? Although I might have missed the help and the opportunity back then, God never gave up on me. And he says, I'm ready when you're ready. And when I got tired of being in control and I threw my hands up and says, okay, that's it. 13 years ago, after losing a 13-year marriage, after losing custody of my children, after having to resign from the greatest job in the world that I had, right? After having all of that loss in my life, and I didn't know where else to go, I said, okay, what do you need from me, God? What do you want from me? What do you need me to do with my life? Because I have tried it all, and I'm to a point, and hopefully it's okay to say this on here. I had attempted suicide, right? 13, 14 years ago, because I had such an extreme independence of depending solely on Natashah to make sure that everything that she wanted and needed out of life was going to come directly just from her. And as a result of just running out of options and not knowing what else to do, I finally surrendered to say, okay, God, I know you exist. I don't know much about you other than the fact that you exist, but I really need you to help me understand what it is that I am really called here to do, because I'm trying to exit this world and you won't let me. I mean, that's really where I was at 14 years ago, and I don't mean to take suicide attempts lightly. What I want people to hear is we all find ourselves to that, most oftentimes we'll find ourselves to that place because we've been self-reliant or self-dependent. So that extreme independence also draws an individual or a dependence on self, a self-dependence, right? And that's a dangerous place to be, because if I depend solely on me, I don't know everything. And I don't claim to know everything, and I will never know everything in this world. So there's going to come a point in our lives where we're going to have to acknowledge and have to admit we don't know everything and that we need help. And are we willing to surrender and humble ourselves and ask for that help?
Ooh, Natashah, you just hit on something that I just learned. Little digression. I had to meet with my coaches last week. We meet every week, and I had to be bold and ask, I need help, guys. Portia needs help. And I was very specific as to what I asked them for. And that took a lot, because we're accustomed, right, to think that when we reach a certain age as adults, we know it all. It's weakness to ask for help. No. Within this last week, me asking my coaches for help with this specific thing has really helped lighten my spirits. It took away my anxiety, and it made me feel as though I accomplished Mount Everest. So, on that note, we're going to take another quick break right here on Group Portia. Everybody, stick with us. We will be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back right here on Group Portia. I'm Jordan Mully with Natashah Khan, and we were continuing our conversation, of course, on patience and understanding ourselves while working through traumas and wounds. So, Natashah, as I continue to go through this grief process, I knew I wanted to work through it in a more healthy way as possible, right? And you had hinted on it when you were talking about being a workaholic as a result of several traumatic things where your emotions are just all over the place and you just can't deal, right? So, why would you say during the grief process, Natashah, do individuals maybe unintentionally fall into addictive patterns?
I mean, first and foremost, I think it comes back to what I said earlier about not being in touch with our emotional selves and not wanting to feel, because at a very young age, feeling brought vulnerability. And with that vulnerability, someone may have potentially been taken advantage of. Someone have feelings and don't know what to do with those feelings. So this idea of feelings has not really reaped any benefits up until this point for us, right? We live in a world of rewards and consequences and loss and gain. And so I've had all these feelings, and it's kind of been left up in the air, kind of unanswered, and not knowing what to do with it. And I believe it transcends into as we get older and just not knowing what to do with our feelings. And so we go from having these beliefs that develops attitudes, and it morphs. We live from what we believe to be true, and we become reactionary, and it becomes very behavioral, right? So I'm not, if I believe that I've lost, I'll use the grief and loss process, and I'll use loss for example. I believe that I have lost, and now that I've lost everything, right? If I've lost everything and that makes me feel some type of way and I don't know how to deal with it, I'm going to put my feelings in what I like to call my infinite box of emotions, right? This is a box that has no measure, but I just store all of my emotions in it because I don't know what to do with it. And what happens is how I feel will drive a behavior. Well, if I'm ignoring my feeling and I'm focused on, man, I've lost everything, I ignore the emotion. I need something to distract me, right? So what am I going to distract myself with? Well, depending upon who you are, how you were raised, how you were influenced, your environment, you can be distracted by sex, where you find yourself in a lot more high-risk sexual situations. You may find yourself using food as a way to comfort. You may find yourself releasing food, right? Anorexia, right? We have people who will use too much food, not enough food, binge eating, etc., or withdrawing from eating. We do that with sex. Some people withdraw from sex, right? So it's not always just being hyperactive with it. We have work. Work is very common. Everybody brags about, oh, I'm a workaholic. No, you're just distracting yourself. That's the reality of that, right? I'm using work as something to focus on, so I don't have to focus on the idea or the belief that I've lost everything. Because the idea of losing everything has me feel in some type of way. But again, we've locked up the emotions, right? We've put those emotions away. So those maladaptive behaviors, those addictive behaviors are an extension. They stem from how I'm feeling. And many people don't want to, well, I don't want to think about that. It's not that you don't want to think about it. You don't want to feel it. And one of the things that I do with my clients today, and many of them struggle and many of them can be frustrated with me at times, is I say, you've got to feel your feelings. Every emotion you experience, you have a right to feel it, right down to anger. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I shouldn't be angry. Yeah, if you're angry, be angry. What I ask you to do is that when you're feeling that feeling, that you don't express it in a way that can cause harm to you and or another person, right? It's better for me if I'm angry to maybe break something in a contained environment than me to go break someone's face. And I say that because when I was younger, I used to look for fights. You know, I used to look to want to stir up trouble when I was angry, when I was lashing out emotionally, right? But clearly it didn't serve me. So now I'm learning I can be angry. It's okay to be angry, but I've just got to learn on how to channel that in a different way. A lot of people use martial arts. A lot of people get into sports, you know, get into walking and running, some even meditation. There's so many other healthy alternatives that can help us learn on how to manage the emotion. But again, we're too busy running from the emotion. So we can't help but dive in to all these external things of this world to bring us what I call immediate gratification, right? I don't like what I'm thinking. I don't like how I'm feeling, but I'm just going to go ahead and go over here and indulge in this, that, and the other, right? Whether that be food, sex, work, drugs, alcohol, to feel better. It's temporary. It's a temporary fix. At the end of the day, guess what? Your emotions are still there in the box because the box is inside you, right? So your feelings are still with you. And I've learned in my recovery that wherever I go, there I am. So I can move geographically. I can move all around the world. Myself, my thoughts, my emotions, and my response to people, places, and things are always going to be with me no matter where I go.
And Natashah, you hit the nail on the head about the immediate gratification. Because let's be honest, social media plays a big role in that, because social media depicts this illusion that, oh yeah, we're supposed to be fine, we're sad today, but then tomorrow it's back to business. Mm-hmm. But no. that is not how grief works. And I can say from me going through this experience, I find myself wrestling still with that, where I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to be fine today, but it's like everybody's telling me, Portia, you got to feel your feelings. Mm-hmm. If you're angry today, that's fine. If you're sad today and you're crying where you can't get off the floor and it's the waterworks show on repeat, that's okay too. Mm-hmm. But it's that wrestling with what society is showing versus what the true reality is. And so, Natashah, for our listeners who are tuning in, how would you recommend they process their feelings, right? We already touched on how there's nothing wrong with anger, nothing wrong with anger, nothing wrong with sadness. Do you recommend they just start journaling out their emotions or applying it into another activity where they can really say, okay, I notice that when I'm starting to feel angry, if I do this activity, I notice it relaxes me. How do you recommend they go about that, Natashah, where they're not super overwhelmed by their emotions and feel as though they have to, pull a guillotine approach? Hopefully not. Right. But you get where I'm going. Can you elaborate on that?
I think absolutely. It comes back to expression of self, and it comes back to communication, finding a healthy way to communicate. So that communication can look a few different ways. Yes, the journaling is a great outpour. It's a great way to express. It's taking whatever's going on mentally and putting it out on paper. And I always say that what goes on in my mind looks very differently than when I put it on paper. I always say there's magic when I put pen to paper. Because when I take the thought out of my head and I write it down and I look at it, I was like, oh, wow, that isn't really how I saw it in my head, right? I mean, I say that sometimes, like I'll say something and I'll tell my girls, I'll be like, that sounded better in my head than when I said it out loud, right? There's just something different about that. So journaling is one avenue. Like I said before, you have running, maybe some form of exercising. And again, nothing to its extreme. It's a way to be able to express it. I learned recently from a woman that I had the blessing to do a Reiki session with, and she talked about healing ourselves and healing the energy within. Our emotion creates energy within the body, right? So you've got to be able to find a way to, in a healthy way, to release that energy. So you can start with the journaling. You can start with talking to another person, talking to a friend, maybe someone who's gone through that grieving process before, maybe have struggled with something similar, and find out from them, how did they deal with it? And just being able to, maybe go to a support group, right? Where there's other like-minded individuals, because a lot of times when we're going through something, we think we're going through it alone and we're the only one going through it and nobody else is going to get it and understand. But we'd be surprised the amount of support groups that are out there today that we didn't have when I was growing up. We have so many resources today that we can tap into. And it's not about going to a support group for someone to give you advice or to tell you what to do. It's just going somewhere to know, okay, I get to be me. I get to be whatever that is, whatever that looks like today. And people get me and people understand that. And there's some comfort. There's something comforting and soothing of being in an environment where people get you. And that is one of the motivating factors of why I got sober. Going to Alcoholics Anonymous did that for me. I can go into a room without feeling judged, without feeling like anybody's looking down on me or thinking that they're better than me. I walked into that room and we just understood each other. And that relatability and understanding each other is the support that really helped me begin to open up and empower my voice to really speak on my truth, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. Last but not least, I would always recommend, depending upon what it is you're struggling with, please don't ever try to deal with it on your own. So going to, working with a sponsor in a program, going to having a mentor, having a coach, right? And or having a therapist. Right? I think it's very important to have someone that is also very professional in your corner as well, depending upon the severity of whatever it is that you might be enduring. And that's just another outlet of you being able to pour yourself out and to be able to get some healthy feedback on how you can then continue to move forward in your process. And then last but not least, because I have to say it, when all of that else fails or you're struggling to go anywhere and do anything and meet anybody, I don't know about you guys out there, but I seek God. Right? I will go to God and I will have a private conversation with God, and I will pour my heart and everything about me to God. And I got to tell you, if no one's ever experienced that, I want to challenge you today to experience it, because it's such an amazing opportunity to be raw, to be uncut, and just to be myself, before God. He already knows, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, where I've been, what I've done. So this is not a surprise or a shock to him, but it allows me the opportunity to get honest, and it gives me a lot of power in being able to express myself and realize that I'm not alone. And like I said, there's a lot of comfort and peace that comes with that.
And the reinforcement, Natashah, of having that support system, right? They say it takes a village to raise a child. And I think it takes a village to also help somebody overcome whatever obstacles, whether it's mental, physical, spiritual, financial. So really the importance of finding your tribe and having your tribe keep you uplifted during moments or periods or seasons of adversity. So we're going to take another quick break right here on Group Portia. Everybody stick with us. We will be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back right here on Group Portia. Well, Natashah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing so much food for thought with our listeners today. If they were interested, Natashah, in connecting with you and learning more about you, is there a website or social media handle you can share with us today?
Sure. You can visit me on www.collaborativehealingpartners.com. Again, that's www.collaborativehealingpartners.com. You can also email me at empoweredvoices45@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Instagram at Collaborative Healing Partners.
Excellent.
I think that's it. Trying to figure out. I have so many other social media platforms, but I think those are the primary three: is our Instagram account, our website, and then you can privately email me again at empoweredvoices45@gmail.
Or just use our trusted friend Google and just type it in. They'll find it.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, there's always another option. So either way, they will find you.
Or Alexa, right? She can find just about anything.
Ain't that the truth? You have to keep her outside at night. But anyway, that's for another day. Natashah, obviously, you wear so many hats. I mean, you are a motivational speaker. You obviously have your own clients who you work with on a one-to-one level. You're also a podcaster, and you've also been featured in numerous articles and such. I'm sure there's a book coming out of you soon. Natashah, how do you find that balance between, obviously you're so passionate about helping other people to overcome the things that you have, and also maintaining your own mental well-being?
Another great question. Time, balance. Finding that balance took practice and realizing, back to what you were saying earlier, I had to do some work in realizing that I was of value and that I was of worth, just like everything else in my life. So I make time and I put everything on a schedule. And if anyone knows me, I am not a fan of a schedule. I do not like schedules. However, in my recovery and sobriety and in finding that balance, I needed a schedule. And I needed a schedule to say, okay, for instance, from 7 to 9 in the morning, I spend my time with the Lord, right? From 9 to 6, I'm working with my clients individually throughout the day. From 6 to 7 o'clock, it's time to prepare for dinner. From 7 to 8, it's dinner with my daughters. And then from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock, either my girls and I are going to do something together as a family, or I'm going to utilize that as downtime for me to decompress from my day. I have been very blessed and fortunate with the hands of God I only work 4 days a week. And I know many people don't have that opportunity, so I have 3 days off. So I have a lot of time for me. what I want to say to a lot of people out there is that there's 7 days in a week and there's 24 hours in a day. You have to know your worth and know that at least in a day, what is 30 minutes? What is 45 minutes? What's even an hour out of a 24-hour day that you can't put aside to take care of you? Whether that's treating yourself to a good book, whether that's, getting, doing something for yourself, going shopping, getting a pedicure, manicure, or just for the fellas, going out there fishing, hunting, or just doing something for you that you a hobby, right? In some instances, just kicking back and putting your feet up. Put away the electronics, put away the phones, the computers, stop checking the emails. Take that time for you. When I can take time for me and I allow myself to decompress, it rejuvenates me and it gives me the power to pursue my passion to be able to help other people. So that schedule and making time for everyone else, when I was married with the kids, the house, working full time, going to school, there was, out of that 7-day week, 1 day was for myself, 1 day was for my husband and I, 1 day was for my kids, 1 day was for one daughter, 1 day was for the other daughter. Like, I split it up. That way everyone was getting a piece of me and I was also getting a piece of me. And now today I still do that, and I make sure that God also gets a piece of me in that, because I didn't have that back then.
And I love that now you've come to a collective, right? Where you've divided up your day, you've divided up your week to where you're like, okay, from this time to this time is God's time, my spirituality. Every single day, I incorporate a block of time for Natashah. It's the same with me. I have a self-care time throughout every single day. I know some people wait till the end of the week. I literally have a self-care SOP in my phone. And for those of you who don't know, SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedures, a technical term that's used in hospitals. I've had one since the beginning of this year, and it comes in handy because if you work for yourself, you have to own your own time. Like, you control how much money you make, you control how many people have access to you. And so for me, I have to carve out that time. And sometimes that self-care SOP, I'm just like, what do I want to do today? So that list is handy because I don't always want to just go and drive to the lake. Sometimes I want to take a road trip really fast, pack me an overnight bag and the dog and keep moving. So it's not always linear, but I digress there. Natashah, I gotta ask this because for our listeners who are tuning who don't know you, you have this weekly event that you do where individuals can come together in a safe space and acquire tools to help them get unstuck and maybe learn more how to empower their own voice. So share with our listeners about your group and how they can be a part of it.
Sure. So Monday nights from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time, I host a group for individuals who have identified that they are codependent, or they're in a codependent relationship or a toxic and unhealthy relationship. And it can be a relationship of any kind. Basically, these individuals have discovered within themselves that they've kind of hit a roadblock in their lives. Maybe they're not happy, or maybe there are other things in their life they wanted to achieve, but being married and having the kids and running kids to school and, just life has just gotten in the way that they've not been able to achieve their lifelong goals. Many people are struggling with worry and fear and anxiety due to having lost someone in their lives, or maybe they have a loved one that's struggling with addiction issues. And it's really all these things in life has held them back from living their best life, so to speak, or living the life that God's called them to live. It is a very spiritually based group on a Monday night. So I welcome anyone that would love to join. On Mondays, they can reach out to me, again, through my email at empoweredvoices45@gmail.com, so that I can provide them with more information. It is an amazing group. It's a very small group right now. We have roughly 15 to 16 members in that group that really come together and offer support. Like Portia, you said earlier, the value of having the support of knowing other people understand what you're going through, and realizing like it's okay that you're going through whatever it is that you're going through, right? And that support brings hope. It gives us the hope that there is a better tomorrow, and that we can still have the family, still have the work, still have all these things, but man, I can actually have a life of my own, and I can actually achieve the things that I've always wanted to achieve. So if you are definitely falling into that category of you can identify with anything that I've shared, please don't hesitate to reach out to me via email, again, at empoweredvoices45@gmail.com.
And you're so right, Natashah, because you never know how one person you connect with, their lyrics of life matches your groove. Literally, you're like,
So
oh my
true.
God, I thought I was the only person who saw, this is this or that is this. And you just never know. And it's just being open. Like you said, back to the whole guy at sea analogy. If God is extending his hand, you asked him for help and he's giving it to you, but you're not being open to recognizing, oh, this is help. And you said it, help is help. There's no like foreign language to it. Help is help. Just like yes means yes, no
And
means
no
no.
means no.
Very simply put. Oh, Natashah, I knew this conversation was definitely worth the wait. We're going to be wrapping up here soon, Natashah, and you have left us with a lot of words of wisdom, food for thought, and ways for us to really reevaluate and pick apart our day and insert ourselves into the day instead of only taking care of other people. Natashah, what words of inspiration can you leave with our listeners today? Whether it's someone who was once in your shoes, where everybody else came before them, or if they're at that state of grief where they're angry at the world, which they're allowed to be, but they're like, I don't care, nothing else matters. But at the same time, deep down, they do really care because they're still here. What words of inspiration, Natashah, can you leave with our listeners today?
I'm going to start with that there's hope. No matter what you're going through, there's hope for a better day. You may not see it right now. You may not feel it right now. You may not think it right now, but there is hope. Life can and will get better. I encourage you to not give up on whatever situations or circumstances you may be dealing with. Do not give up on life. Do not give up on yourself. No matter where you've been and what you've gone through, it will propel you, if it hasn't already, to be able to take what you've been through. There's somebody out there in the world that needs to hear your story, that needs to hear what was once a test for you is now your testimony, right? So be realizing that everything that you've gone through in life, good, bad, and indifferent, there's a message in there. So I encourage you to discover what that message is for yourself and find your voice and speak your truth and share that message with the world, because there's at least one person out there in the world that needs to hear it. And I'm a big believer that I am called and chosen today to at least make the difference in one person's life. And if I can do that, then I'm doing God's work, right? And we're all here to do the same. So just don't give up and keep, be willing to have an open mind, an open heart, be willing to learn and not believe that we have all the answers, right? Part of our growing, for us to flourish and to really live the lives that we're called to live, we have to remain teachable.
Ooh, Natashah, you literally just hit on my favorite phrase, remaining teachable and being okay with not knowing everything. But that's the beauty in it, right? They call each day the present for a reason, because you never know what's going to fall into your lap,
Amen.
Whose story is going to be influenced by your story of turning your mess into a message.
Amen.
Well, everybody, that was Natashah Khan that you heard from. And that concludes another episode of Grew with Portia, everybody. Thanks for listening and have a good evening.